Welcome back, everybody. Today's video will hopefully help you explore the lands of Hyrule more effectively. Some of these tips will help you navigate the world, some will help extract more resources, and others will help you organize yourself so that you can avoid future frustration. As always, we'll begin with some of the more obvious or basic points. For starters, let's just run through a brief checklist. I like to always have a weapon for smashing ore deposits, at least one fairy in case I'm careless, and a large variety of foods and elixirs with buffs. I also keep my shield stocked with a variety of fused Zonai devices for better mobility. Try experimenting with a bunch of them, including sleds for getting around on snow and sand. I want you all to discover as much as you can for yourselves, but seriously consider advancing the Hateno Lab questline if you haven't already. I promise you, the rewards for it will be incredibly useful on your adventure. As for facilitating exploration, it's up to you whether you want to use different clothing or the aforementioned foods and elixirs for status effects. If you prefer to use clothing, then I'll just say be thorough when you explore caves, although not every cave has a piece of clothing. What every cave does have, however, at least on the overworld, not in the sky, is a bubble frog. Maybe you notice that some caves on your map have check marks while others don't, similar to shrines that get the chest icon after opening all of their chests. For caves, you'll get a check mark once you collect the bubble gem in there. You have a couple of options for helping you find caves. One is to make an offering at the various cherry blossom trees throughout Hyrule, and the other is to track the movement of fleeing bloopies. They will always lead you in the direction of a cave. Alright, now let's move on to some tips for getting around and finding more resources. I've got to repeat my favorite tip, which is using Ultra Hand or Fuse to illuminate key objects. There are some differences in what items are illuminated by the two abilities, but that shouldn't concern you for resource collection. I am constantly flashing Ultra Hand as I'm running through Hyrule. You'll find it so useful in forests, around stables, in the underworld around trees, after battles when items are scattered all over, near bodies of water for sunken chests, etc. It's my most used ability in the game for this function alone. My second most used ability is probably the camera. Like with Ultra Hand, I'm constantly using it, its zoom, and the identification that it provides to scout virtually everything. Since its identification feature extends further than Ultra Hand's grab, you can use it to sweep an area for information. Let's go back for a moment and focus on water. When you see a chest that's out of reach in water, you might think to attach a series of logs to one another, or maybe to assemble a boat out of Zonai parts. But did you know that you can freeze the water, toss ice fruit, swing a frost weapon, or use the most economical option, an ice rod, to create platforms in the water? These can even be connected to create bridges. If you're looking for resources that won't cost you anything, then look no further than the stables. Make your rounds, literally go around them, of the stables to stock up on flint, wood, arrows, and occasionally some basic weapons. Again, Ultra Hand is useful here for picking up the crates and dropping them from the maximum height to preserve your weapon durability. If you constantly break crates wherever you go, then you shouldn't struggle with your arrow count. For the final section, and probably the most important, let's go over ways to make better use of your maps and pins. We'll begin with using your different maps in conjunction. The surface and the depths essentially mirror each other. Shrines and light routes share the exact same locations on the maps, so use one to help you find the other. As you reveal more of both maps, you'll notice that even the geography is similar across both. Water on the surface is impassable terrain in the depths. Mountains on the surface are typically valleys in the depths, and valleys on the surface are typically mountains in the depths. A lot of goodies await you in the deepest part of the depths, so you can plan those trips by looking for the most elevated regions on the surface. Also, if you have difficulty accessing a light route because of impassable terrain, then look at the surface for where there are gaps in the water. Maybe you need to find a different chasm to re-enter the depths from elsewhere. Now let's look at the mini-map. You can actually display any of the 3 world maps here, no matter where you are. Simply enter the map menu, and whichever map is displayed will occupy your mini-map. This should make finding light routes so much easier. Next time you're in the depths, try displaying the surface on your mini-map. Related to this is a function with pins. You can place a pin on one map layer, and then edit it on another map layer. Suppose you encounter a weather phenomenon on the surface that disrupts your Pura pad. Thankfully, it will only disable the surface's map. So what you can do for navigation is place pins with your scope on the surface, then in your map screen, edit the pins on the depths map, and display your newly marked depths map on the mini-map. All of a sudden, the weather phenomenon doesn't seem so bad. Let's stick with the Puripad for one more moment. You may have noticed that if you use the scope while paragliding, then the game will slow down to what seems like bullet time, might actually be a little bit slower. This extra airtime can be helpful when you're scouting for tiers and Koroks within geoglyphs. Now back to pins. When I'm exploring, I'll throw one out simply to gauge the distance between where I am and whatever I'm looking at. Sometimes something that appears close will be much further than anticipated. Another thing that I like about pins is their precision. I mark tons of stuff on my map, use a pin on something in the world, and then edit that to the desired symbol to make its placement more accurate. Editing your pins will also prevent you from running out of them. Lastly, to wrap up this video, get into the habit of placing tons of symbols on your map. Remember when I said that I like to have a fairy in my inventory at all times? I mark their locations on the map with the heart symbol. It's up to you whether you want to mark their exact locations, but whenever something is discovered in a well, and it doesn't have to be a fairy, it could be any resource, I prefer placing the symbol over the location of the well. I do the same thing when I want to identify a monster in a cave, place the symbol over the cave icon instead of its exact location. 20 hours later, I won't waste my time searching on the overworld when I actually need to return underground for it. Alright, that concludes a longer video. Thank you to everyone who watched, and as always, I hope I was able to pass on some knowledge to you. If anything was a little confusing, don't hesitate to ask, I'll clarify it for you, and if you have any other suggestions, please leave them in the comments. Thanks again, and bye for now.